All right, we'll get started here in just a minute. Get some pizza.
Any utensils?
I'm guessing not. Fingers, teeth, tongue.
Sausage is everybody signed it on this?
Probably not.
It was really gentle. It was doing tight. So I got first two. You can type, it's just you can't see what you're typing. Yeah. Oh, you mean the new one?
You want Mountain Dew or water?
Water. I think we're good. I got the
Okay.
Good.
Greasy fingers on the keyboard. I'm done.
Because I didn't want to grab the food.
I just used $400 I had that
I
whole
have 3 kids. I'm
keyboard place. Are you on YouTube Live, Mason?
I am.
I missed.
I only have one bad piece. Yeah. The 20, 50 bucks? Well, it's the first one I've been joining. Mason, you look great.
Look amazing.
So.
Thanks.
All in all, did it feel different? I thought it was great. I thought that, I think you noticed this was the presentation.
get a lot. So.
All right, Kevin, should we get started or? Okay. How's everyone doing? Thanks for coming out. Yeah, today we're going to be talking a little bit about Vue. Who here knows anything about Vue? Has any experience with Vue? Let's see, we got Andrew, a couple of people from our team, so that's good. So for the rest of you, hopefully you can learn something and implement it maybe with some FileMaker. So that's kind of the goal. So who am I? I'm one of the senior technical project managers here at DB Services. I certified in FileMaker 14 through 18. I've been working with FileMaker about 8 years. A few years ago when we still had a developer dev cup, I was one of the winners, so that was kind of fun. Had a couple of the articles featured in the FileMaker newsletter, and I run a team here that focuses on adding value for customers. So the goal of this session is to show you the basics of Vue, learn how to use Vue with FileMaker in WebViewer, or how to use Vue, build a web portal using Vue, and some of the gotchas and potential workarounds that'll be helpful. So first of all, what is Vue.js? So Vue.js is a JavaScript framework. It's used for creating dynamic and interactive front-end user interfaces. So it allows you to create interfaces that react to the data, and it makes it really easy to make complex interfaces and stuff. And it's supported in all modern browsers, IE 9 and up. So why Vue there's a lot of JavaScript frameworks out there. I don't know how many of you guys look into them as much as I do, but there's a ton out there. And the reason we like Vue here is that it's focused. It does one thing really well: reactive interfaces. It's simple to learn. You can just include a script tag and you can start using it, or you can get more complex and you can use the command line interface tool to create really complicated apps. So that's why it's called an adaptive framework. So I also think it's a little bit faster and smaller than React, which is from Facebook. It's very similar to React, but it's a little faster, smaller, or Angular. And it uses regular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you don't have to learn, like JSX is what React uses, and TypeScript and some other languages. So if you already have a little bit of understanding of that, it's a little easier to grasp. The other thing is it just has a ton of momentum. There's a ton of plugins out there, a lot of libraries. Makes it very fun to work with and easy to pull in stuff. So now we're going to go over some of the similarities to FileMaker and how I think that they kind of make a good fit for each other. So the first one is called Twoway Databinding. So for FileMaker, this is nothing new. You have data in your database and you put fields on the screen and they're tied together. You type in one, the data updates. That's not that special to a FileMaker developer, but on the web, that's that's more of a big deal. Keeping data in sync between the actual database, the data model, and the interface is kind of hard to do, and this makes it really easy to do.
Is it stateless, or how are they? Stateful, or?
No, it's not stateful. It's all stateless. It's all on your local computer. So another feature it has is computed properties. These can be seen and thought of as calculations, basically. So you can create a calculation. If any of the data that it's referencing changes, it'll automatically update your calculation. So, pretty similar concept, but a lot of other frameworks don't have that. Filters, those are going to be similar to FileMaker's data formatting on fields. In FileMaker, you can select a number field and say, I want this to display as currency, or I want to format the date this way. Well, you can build your own filters in Vue. And then finally, methods are comparable to FileMaker scripts. So I'm actually going to go into a little bit more on each of these, just kind of pull up a JS fiddle. Let's see if we can zoom in at all. So this is an example of two-way data binding. So let's just worry about the HTML and the JavaScript here. So it's pretty simple. HTML, you have a div tag with an ID of app, we have a paragraph tag, and then we have an input. And you'll notice this V model, that's this right here, and this V model are Vue specific syntaxes. So if you notice down here, we're basically starting up a new Vue instance, and we're binding it to the app. So this is the app div. And then we're saying, think of this as the database. The data is kind of your database where you're storing information about the current page. And in it we have a field, if you will, called message, and it holds hello world. And so you'll notice over here, this is the actual web page that it's doing. It's just basically displaying that. So over here, if I type, it's instantly updating it's all bound together. So again, that's pretty hard to do in JavaScript. I know you guys are all like, yeah, we do this every day in FileMaker, but yeah, that's the two-way data binding. Computed properties, this one's even less exciting, but we have a data property with message again. This one says hello, and then we have a computed property that is just going to capitalize it. So this is the name of the calculation, if you will, capitalized message, and it's just a function that runs a little bit of JavaScript to uppercase it. And then up here we have message. So you can think of this as kind of like a merge variable. So on my page I want to insert some data, and you do curly braces instead of brackets, and then you can bring in your data. And then it shows it over here. So does that all kind of make sense so far?
So the two uppercase is where is that defined?
So that's actually just built into JavaScript. Yeah, so you do need to, there's definitely some JavaScript if you know a little bit of that, mostly some string manipulation, stuff like that. And you can do this multiple ways. This filter actually does the same thing where it's going to capitalize something, but in a slightly different way. So this is what I was talking about, where you can do data formatting. So I have a filter, and it's called capitalize, and it's just going to take a value property, and then it's just going to uppercase it. So then now when I'm inserting it, so FileMaker doesn't really have a, you wouldn't really do this obviously in the merge variables in FileMaker. You would go into the field settings and say, I want to uppercase this. But in Vue, you just do a pipe character and any filters you want to do on it. And then so you can reuse a filter in many different places. I typically use them for formatting currency is probably the number one.
Euro versus dollar.
Yeah, you could do that.
I have a question. Why do you think it's called filter? It seems like it's
That's a good question. It's not a very good name. Someone probably has a better reason for it, but I don't know. And then methods, we'll go over this real quick, is like I said, this is more like a script. So I have a method object, and in it I have a script, if you will, called say. And it takes a parameter called message, and all it's doing is it's going to show a pop-up dialog. And then I have two buttons. The hi button is going to pass hi parameter. The what button passes that. So hi what.
And what tool are you using right there?
This is JS Fiddle.
So it's in the browser.
Yeah.
We actually used it in one of your previous articles.
The other Vue article. Yeah, these are the same examples from my Vue Part 1 article.
Pretty
So
cool. So you can just sit there and just change code and review right there. Nice.
yeah. So
Is that a free or is that a subscription?
it's free. Yeah, and you will. So
Yeah, there is. No, it's literally browser based.
yeah, there is a. I basically just had to make Vue work. There's a drop down, and you just choose the language. So yeah, it has Vue built in, so it makes it really nice to kind of play around with. Oops. Some other similarities. So it has something called instance lifecycle hooks. I would think of these more as triggers in your database for on startup or close. It's very similar to that. It's when the page, they have before it's created, when it's created, before it's mounted, updated. So very similar to FileMaker, you can hook in and run methods or scripts during different parts of the life cycle of the page. Conditional rendering. This is actually more, I know it sounds like conditional formatting, but this is more whether you're going to show or hide something on the screen. So, and FileMaker has that, obviously. Class and style binding, that's more where conditional formatting, where you could add or remove classes from the HTML to affect what it looks like.
So CSS.
Yeah, CSS. Yeah. And then there's something called watchers, which is more similar to like a field level trigger. So if this field changes, I want to run this method or this script. So, I think if you think about it this way, it's a lot easier to pick up for FileMaker developers. At least it was for me. Some differences, the things that maybe don't really necessarily align with FileMaker. FileMaker doesn't have anything like custom components, although I think we all wish it would. Custom component is basically a reusable chunk of code. If I wanted to make a button, like my cool button, and use it throughout my system.
So it's kind of like a custom function.
Yeah, I guess so, but it's more UI driven because it's and we actually go into an example on this one. There's a basic example. So it's very similar to how you when you do a new Vue object, but you do a Vue.component. And in this case, this is the name of the component, button counter. And there's still a data property, and there's one, it keeps count. So this, every time you use this this component, it's always going to have some state tied to that one component. In this case, the count, how many times you've clicked the button. And then the template is the HTML for it. So when
I
you
always think about this, like this would be like if we were able to add our own, like you can add a field or a portal or like different types of layout objects. This is like you making your
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And I think right now a lot of people use web viewers to kind of do their own like
Yeah.
components, kind of a little bit in some cases.
Yeah, you can definitely.
But yeah, this would it's like UI components that you're able to add.
Yeah, and then obviously you can use them. You know, if you use one, or you can, like in this example, he just duplicates that tag, and then you've got 3 buttons, and they all keep track of their own data. It makes it super easy to, build things. Another thing that we're hoping FileMaker gets soon, version control. This isn't necessarily a Vue specific thing, it's just a nicety when you're playing around with the web code. You can version control it and use Git for merging and stuff. Again, hoping that's in the next version. We'll hope. And then the other really kind of big difference that I see is there's huge UI component libraries out there. So you don't have to build everything. There's a huge list of resources, menus, PDFs.
I would love this.
I know, right? The list just keeps going on and on and on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in here. If you want it, someone's probably already built it.
I know that custom functions or something, or Brian Dunning kind of.
Yeah, it's similar to that, except again, it's more UI driven usually. So like, if you need a date picker, there's probably 20. You can find the exact perfect one you want. Yeah, exactly.
Sliders, anything you can imagine that we don't have as components.
Yeah,
Right.
these are all notifications.
If I want to do a portal inside a portal,
Mm-hmm.
can't like right now.
Ribs,
Exactly.
like rib views and stuff, you can like anything.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So yeah, now I'm just basically gonna build something. So let me show you what we're gonna build together. Maybe my escape button is not real and it's not working. Because I'm not. There we go. Let me close some of this up real quick. Oops. Okay, so we're basically going to be building just a little shopping cart. I've already built all the HTML and the CSS, so we're not going to focus really on that. But the idea is you'd have a list view of products, and you can't see it now because the cart is in the way, but there would be a button over here to add items to your cart. And then when you click cart, this is going to slide out and show you all the items in your cart. Obviously, right now it's all just static HTML, nothing moves, it's all just been hard-coded. So now we're going to take it and just basically start making it reactive and adding Vue to it. And yeah, by the end we should have a little shopping cart app. So yeah, let's just start by going over the HTML. It's pretty basic stuff. I tried to keep it simple. We have a nav bar here, that's the nav bar. We have a table for our products. So, I don't know how familiar everyone is with HTML, but probably pretty useful if you want to get into Vue. Anyway, so yeah, we have a row with some items, and then finally we have the cart and a couple of rows of images and items there. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is basically just bring in Vue, the library. So if you go to Vuejs.org, you can click the Get Started, and there is some tags right here. So we just need a script tag there. We'll just put it in here at the body, and then we're also going to want to include our own script tag. And I've made a file over here just called script.js, and it's empty right now, but we will want to include that. Okay, so now we've included Vue, we've included our JavaScript, and now we need to basically instantiate the Vue object, and we basically need to tell it we want everything inside of our div right here. We have a div at the very top level called app, and we want to tie everything to that. So I usually just scroll down to an example find some of this. It's pretty much always the same starting out. And paste that in here. And yeah, so now we've tied it together. Obviously nothing's changed yet. Let me move up there. Nothing's changed yet. It doesn't do anything yet. So we'll probably just start with something small, like this, the name of the store. Instead of hard coding that, we'll put it into our data object so that we can control it there. So we'll add a data property, or a field if you will, called store name, and we'll leave that as that. And then we're going to go and put a merge variable right here. And now we can just check to make sure we've got everything wired up correctly. Yeah. Yeah, so it does flash briefly with the brackets. They've thought of that too. So on your app, you do v-cloak, and then I've already added some styles to here. It says v-cloak display none, and now you don't see it. Yeah. I was going to save that for the end, but you pointed it out immediately. So, up next, we should probably get rid of this cart window so it's not hiding our products. So, to do that, we could do conditional rendering, so we just don't render it. But instead, I'm going to add a class that slides it in and out because it's going to look cool. So, in order to do that, we first need to know if the cart is open or not. So I'm just going to add a boolean here. So just a boolean field called show cart. And if that's set to true, we want to see it. Otherwise we don't. And we're just going to find our cart in here. And so we can bind things directly to the style. So right now we already have a cart class. Yeah, sorry, trying to zoom in. But we want to add another class if it's open. So we will do class, and it's this colon here that makes it dynamic. So we want to add the style. I think I named it cart closed. And I kind of did this backwards, but cart closed if don't show cart. See, that kind of reads terribly, so I apologize, but all right, so now we shouldn't see it. All right, the cart's gone, but we have no way to open the cart. So to do that, we're just going to tie it into this to our button. This is where our button is, and we're going to do v on click, and we're going to set. We're basically going to update our field. So this show cart, we're going to just turn it. We're going to toggle it. So show cart is going to be the opposite. So in JavaScript, you can just do exclamation point show cart. So whatever it was, it'll flip it. So let's reload. There we go. Fancy little. Yay! You can clap.
10 hours.
This is not the right instruction sheet. Oh well, we'll wing it. I don't know what happened to the newly printed one.
I have faith in you.
All right, good.
It'd be fun unless it's freestyle, right?
Yeah, right. Okay. Up next, we should probably load in our products. We're going to load them in dynamically. So I've already built a little FileMaker app. It's hosted. It has a table with a couple product images in here. Nothing too fancy. And I've actually already built it because this isn't really the point. Isn't really the data API. We have some articles on that I'll point you to. But we're just using a PHP file, and it's just gonna get a token from our cloud, and then it's going to get some records, and I do have a bit of formatting. I loop through the records and format them a little bit nicer.
Just to clarify, we probably saw that we use Perl, after your page,
Yeah. So yeah, if I just went there, you would see all of my JSON. So now we need to basically load that in here and display the items here.
So, excuse me.
Uh-huh.
Excuse me, is FileMaker acting as a RESTful server in this case?
Yeah. The FileMaker data API is a RESTful
So each
server.
time you hit a button, you have to place it.
Yes, you do, but you get 2 gigabytes per user per month. Something like, is it 2 gigabytes per user per
I
month?
don't think we've ever seen customers.
We haven't even got close.
Yeah, wait. Can you go back to there after you do the curl command that you're moving through what the results are they, the JSON that comes back from the monitor?
Yeah, the JSON comes back from the server.
You're converting that into an array.
Here, I'll show you what it looks like raw. So yeah, this is, it's pretty similar. Well, I think this isn't the right one. But anyway, it just is really too much data that I don't really care about. The database, the layout. There's a lot of metadata.
Yeah.
There's a lot of portal data, and it's all set inside this field data stuff. So I like to format it a little bit just to make it easier on ourselves.
Yeah, so ultimately you're trying to, like, how did it get into the view?
That is next.
What format is that using?
That was a PHP array.
Oh,
Yeah, I meant to show
Okay, so
the
data
native.
is running on in a PHP, so your view calls the PHP file.
Yep.
Then it interacts with the data API.
Yep.
Okay.
And then it's only creating the array.
Yep. And so the reason you don't want your JavaScript to interact directly with FileMaker is JavaScript is obviously a client-side framework, so you would be able to see all the data, and yeah, so that's why we have the
You
backend.
want to put login into your JavaScript. And then
Yeah. So, and you don't have to
you
use
just your
PHP.
Browsers and specs, and then be like,
You
oh,
can
look,
see that.
there's
Yeah.
no login to the database.
Exactly. So you could use Node, because Node is still JavaScript, but it all runs on the back end. In this example, it was just easier to do PHP, so that's what we did. Anyway, so now we are going to load that up. So we're going to make a new method. So method or script. So methods, and you just make a methods object, and then you can have as many methods in here as you want. So we'll call it load data, and it's actually going to be an async function. So by default, JavaScript is single-threaded. It doesn't like to stop for things, but an async function will basically wait for the data to load. We have to wait for FileMaker to return the data. So I am going to do. We're going to use the fetch API. This doesn't actually work in all older browsers, so I probably wouldn't recommend doing this if you need to support older browsers. But for these purposes,
3IE9
I think you could basically get it to work if you use polyfills. Polyfills basically work behind the scenes and make it work with older browsers. Yeah, that's outside the scope of what I want to go over now, though. All right, so that loads our data into the response, and then we need to do that basically just tells us if it succeeded or not, and then we get that object and we get the JSON. Yeah.
What exactly is the PHP? What are we returning from that? Are you printing the array out?
I'm going to save it to up here. I haven't done it yet.
Oh, no,
Right.
I'm sorry, like the PHP on the last step of the PHP file is
array.
just the PHP array.
Yeah, I'm just printing. Oh, that's not the right one. I'm basically taking that array,
Oh, you're
um,
converting it to JSON.
converting it to JSON, and then
So
printing it to the
returns
screen.
The text JSON to
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we have-
Yeah. So that's what gets passed and saved into this data variable. And we're gonna I'm gonna call it catalog. We're gonna basically need a field to store our JSON that's returned. Right now it's just gonna be an empty array because we don't have any products when we first come to the screen. But then in here, we can access catalog and set it to data. So this in Vue references, it's basically referencing the Vue instance. And then I have access to any of my data properties. I have access to my methods. So this is just I'm basically just saying update catalog with the data that's returned. So right now we have a method, but we're not actually calling it at any point. So what we can do is we can add a script trigger, if you will, when we create. Yeah, this is one of the lifecycle hooks. So when it's created, we are going to run this.load data. And just need a comma there. So
That's what I call syntactically rich.
Yeah. A lot of terminology that's foreign.
yeah.
We did Angular class. That was even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, Angular is pretty rough.
Like React and Vue a lot more than Angular.
Angular, nobody could keep up.
So I've installed a Vue plugin. There's a Vue Dev Tools plugin, and it lets you do a lot of nice debugging and stuff. So I've opened that up, and these are our components right here. We only have one component called root, but in root you'll see that we have the show cart, we have the store name. You'll also see that we successfully loaded the catalog and stored all the data, our array in the catalog array. So some cool stuff you can do here. You can actually edit the data right in here. So
We got that. It's like Angular.
yeah, you can change it. Yeah, I don't know what that does. Oh yeah, you can do that. There's a checkbox. So that is very helpful when you're trying to debug stuff. But anyway, so now we need to make sure that our interface is reacting to this new data, this catalog. Right now it's still static. So we're just going to say whenever this catalog changes, we want our list to update. So let's find our list. Again, this is just a table. I can probably get rid of that. So we don't need multiple rows because we're going to just make a loop. So let's get rid of this row
You're changing the part
to be dynamic. So the syntax is actually pretty easy here. It's v4, and then you do for an item in, we'll call it product. That makes for product in catalog. Again, that's the name that we decided to call our field. And so we're going to basically loop through the catalog, and we're going to take the object, the top level object, and put it into a variable named product. And then we have access to it here. So then we could do product.product. Because if you remember, if you look at it, product. So I'm referencing the first object is product, and I'm referencing the product. I should have probably named it name, so my bad. But we have 4 items in here, and we have the different names, but that's the only one we've updated so far. So let's go ahead and update the image. So images and stuff like that are a little different. You might be tempted to go like, and then that will, and then you get rid of these.
That's going to be a Google food later.
That was one of the gotchas, I guess. Yeah. All right. So now we're pulling images, the names. We'll update the rest here real quick. product dot price, and we don't have a total yet, but we do have a quantity. So we're going to model this. So again, vModel basically just means we're going to tie an input to the data. So we're going to tie this to product.quantity. And now if you look at our behind the scenes data in here, if I update this, it updates the quantity. Yeah, you'll notice it's actually coming in as a text field. This is another gotcha.
Was that strong data type?
You can do, or sorry, not dot number. Yeah. So let's see if that worked. Yeah, there we go. Great. So we got our prices, everything. Next thing we need to tackle is the total. So to get the total to work, there's a lot of different methods you could do to do this. I'm going to just make a method called total, and it's going to be a function, and the function is going to need two parameters. It's going to require that we pass in a quantity and an amount. And all it's going to do is return, actually we'll do total equals, so I always like to wrap mine in a parse float, just to make sure if for some reason someone passed in text field, it converts it to a number. So you can think of that as get as number. Times parse float amount, and then
I see the Nathan Hale that's there.
and then I'm also just gonna cut off. Yeah, I'm rounding it because you get some weird things occur. So over here, you can call a method directly from the template. So total, helps if you spell it right, product dot quantity and product dot price. And then now, let's see if it works. Yeah. So yeah, that's what's so cool about reactive. You know, it makes it a lot easier. I didn't have to consciously update this, you know, get the value, update it, keep everything in sync. It just does it for me. I haven't really been looking at this. What was next? Yeah, kind of. I mean, I'm going to show getting it in there. I'm not going to. It's not a super in-depth back into FileMaker process. This is more about Vue in general. All right, so I'm going to add a filter for currency. And again, this is just a way to format data. So I'm going to name it currency. And you'll notice, so once you start getting into this, you'll notice everything's kind of the same. It's either data or it's a function. So our methods are functions. Our create is just a function. Our currency is a function, and it requires it'll pass the value. And so all it really needs to do is return that plus the value, and that's all it really needs to do. And then now we can use that on like our price. So I know it might seem easier. Oh, it didn't work. Oh, I think I did. Yeah. Oh, filters. Yeah. There we go. So now we've got currency. We should probably have a way to add items to our cart now. So we're going to just make another method. call it add to cart. And we're going to make it so it requires a product. You basically give it the product object, and then it will add it to our, and we have nowhere to store this yet, so I'm just going to add another field called cart, and it'll start out empty. So we could, we need one thing. Basically need to make a new item because the product doesn't have the total price on it. So I want to basically make a new object that includes the price of everything, and then I'm going to put it into the array. So to do that, we'll just call this let item equal, and there's a kind of a cool trick to duplicating an existing object. You just do ... like that, and that will duplicate everything from that into the new object, and then you can add additional things. So
Yeah. Is that a JavaScript or a Vue thing?
that's a JavaScript thing.
Is that fresh?
Yeah. So we need to get the total. So thank you. I forgot about the name. Spread operator. So we need to I basically want to get the total, I guess the item total, and we can reuse that. We can call methods either from the UI or we can call them directly from other methods. So I'm going to call this .total, and I'm going to pass in product quantity and product price, and then I'll save it here. And then all we got to do is update our cart with the new item. So this dot cart, and we're just going to push it in. So it goes push just means it's going to push it to the last item of the array. So we push our item. And we didn't update our UI yet, so it's not going to show anywhere except in the Dev Tools. But we can at least see if it's working. So it is not working. Oh, I didn't tie it to the button. That would help. So to tie it to the button, you can either do v on, or there's a short code that I like is @ So @ click. We are going to add to cart, and we're going to pass. So remember, this is part of our loop, our row loop. So we have access to the product object inside this loop. So I can just pass the entire product in one go. And now, there we go. And we should have a total, which we do. It's in quotes, but that's okay. Now all we have to do is update our cart so that it shows that, and it's exactly like this, but instead of product and catalog, we'll do product and cart. So we'll just make this dynamic. So v for product in cart. Product.image, make it dynamic. We're going to need the name, which is named terribly, product.product. Product.quantity, product.price, and product.total. Alright, so we'll add a couple of those, and just to make sure add another one. Yeah, so that is working perfectly. But now we got a few other issues now. Our cart total is not correct, our price is not correct, and we're still showing there's nothing in your cart message. So we will do that. Kevin, what time do we go to? 7:30? Okay. We'll go till 10 then.
The Cincinnati crowd.
Yeah, I'll be here by myself coding. All right, so let's add a computed property just to total up how many items we have in the cart. So computed, we'll make an object. Again, if you're familiar with the JSON, this is pretty similar syntax, but it's called JavaScript notation instead of JSON notation. And that allows us to do a little bit more. So computed, we're going to name this one items in cart total. And it's a function. And this is actually a really easy one. We're just going to return the length of the array. So this.cart.length, and that will basically give us how many items are in the array. And so we just copy our computed property name, come over here, and that's it.
What makes that a computed instead of just a method?
You could make it a method, but this time it'll update without me having to think about it. So it's like an unstored calc. That make sense?
Instead of having to put a trigger on it.
Yeah, instead of having to put a trigger on it.
It runs it once and then caches the value.
Yeah.
Everything references the cache.
So it's in that case, it's more like a stored calculation because like dates and stuff, if you do date.now, if it doesn't update, it'll keep the old date. So good point. All right, so we got the items in the cart. We can add another computed property for the total. So let's call this cart total. And we are just going to we'll make I'm just basically going to loop through all the items in the cart and add it to the total. So I start off with a 0, and then I'm going to do this.cart.forEach. And yeah, this is the syntax gets a little nasty in this case, but if you bear with me, we're basically looping. It's very similar to our other loops. We're saying for each item in the cart, create a variable called product that we have access to, and then do something with that. So in this case, we're going to do grand total plus equals. Plus equals just means take that value and add to it. Don't just override it. And product dot total, and then we return the grand total. And I didn't save that one. And again, we'll just update our merge variable down here. And we'll make it currency formatted. I think this is actually going to break it because I think, well, we'll find out. Yeah, I think, let's find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, this is why I like to wrap it in parse float.
Sounds about right.
So we'll just wrap that in a parse float. And there we go. Now it's working. All right. So let's get. I don't like this message. There are no items in your cart. So let's fix that real quick. Right here. So this div is basically wrapping around that table that shows the products. So we can just do a directive called vif. So we only want to display this div if cart, I think it was cart total. No, that wasn't it. Items in cart total. That was a terrible name too, sorry. Is greater than 0. We want to show that. Otherwise, we can just do v-else. We want to show the message like that. So nothing in your cart. You can add. Yep, and there it didn't show. Okay. Up next, we should probably have a way to remove items from our cart.
Is that if else in Vue is a Vue specific?
Yep. Yep.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so up next we need a way to remove items from our cart. So, remove from cart. Instead of requiring, instead of the parameter being a product this time, we're going to just return the index that should be removed. And this, it's a little easier that way. And we just do this dot cart dot splice and the index that we want to remove and how many. We only want to remove 1. And that's all you have to do on that side. Splice just basically, yeah, it'll basically remove items however many you tell it to. And again, JavaScript, so it's going to be a 0-based index. So here's my button. So when I click on something, remove from cart. The only problem is I don't have an index, but it's actually pretty easy to do. You just, when you're looping through your cart, you can just do wrap that in parentheses, and you can also grab the index. And we'll just put that in there. So we'll add a couple items and see if we can remove them. You'll notice the cart went down, the cart total went down, or corrected. So yeah, the more you build onto it, the more you see how powerful it really is and how everything just stays in sync. You don't have to worry about it.
We probably need 3 days in Angular for you to do the same demo. Seriously.
Yeah, well, I'm probably going a little quick, so.
Yes, that was the problem.
Yeah. That's why I wasn't an Angular fan. Yeah, I'm thinking the only thing we really have left is basically pushing it back into FileMaker. Again, these are not what I would say exhaustive. Is that a word? But yeah, we're going to basically start with the data API. So I'm just going to make a method called data API that runs a function, and the function is just going to basically just go to a URL. The URL is, I think this was all on my other notes. That was all great. But it should be run script.php, and then, so yeah, I just made a PHP run script function, and it takes 2 get parameters, a script and a param. So script equals save, and param equals, and we are going to need to encode URL or URI component, and then we're also going to need to JSON.stringify this.cart. So this will take everything in our cart. It's already JavaScript. Well, this turns it into JavaScript, and then it just sends it to FileMaker. The only thing we need to do left to do, yes, sorry.
Convert it back into JSON and send the JSON to the API.
Yeah.
Which at that point should generate a new records somewhere.
You could. I didn't take the time. I just
Okay.
basically display the JSON,
Okay.
make sure it's working. Window.location. You'd probably normally want to do this with Ajax or something, so you don't actually reload the page. I got a little lazy here at the end, so. Oh, I broke everything. Well, we have a handy console here. No, that doesn't help. 58. Oh, I forgot to concatenate. Alright, should be good. I hope. Alright, so we'll add a couple items to our cart. I'm going to just pull up this. We'll just clear that out. So that way we can do it right here. I don't know why those aren't showing up. I didn't test that, I guess. Anyway, oh, I didn't tie it to the button either.
You need to do two fixed.
Oh.
You don't want 100.
Cart total. All right, and then we need to also tie the data API button to that function we made. Okay. Let's see if it works. There we go. So yeah, it's just basically going to the PHP page and then coming back, which is why it reloads like that. Again, you probably wouldn't want to do that. But anyway, it did work. Brought in all of our JSON. And that script I'll show you is called save. And it's literally just setting and committing. Where's the air traffic?
Comments. Let's talk about this now.
Uh-oh.
Input variables.
Oh, now you guys have something to say.
Jeremiah's here to just heckle, right?
Yeah. So yeah, the other major way that you can communicate between a Vue app and FileMaker is using FMP URLs. Yeah, so we'll do that next. It's pretty similar. FMP URL.
Right, because we want to launch a Apple interactive file.
Actually, it's basically the same thing, just a different URL syntax. Instead of this, you do FMP. You could do FMP. Oops, that wasn't right. Or in FileMaker 18 and up, you can actually version control which version you want to open.
Right. I remember this because it will describe your default if you don't specify.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the file name. All right, let's. Okay, let's see if that all worked out. And we'll add a couple items. Come in here and do the web viewer test. And yeah, it worked. So that is the gist. Questions?
Previously, you were taking JSON for data, scriptifying that, and then sending it through as a URL query frame. Does it also support sending it through as the body of a post or something?
No. Not through the FMP URLs. No, everything has to be URL encoded. Through the data API, the way I was doing it, you would have to URL encode it, but you could use an Ajax and post it. Yeah, so that would probably be the better way because URLs have a limit on how long they can be. So that would probably be the preferred method.
Especially in that case, 'cause if someone had 55 iPhones.
Yeah.
Like submit, it's a lot of data, and now you don't, have enough
Yeah.
file all those iPhones.
22.5 iPhones.
It just fails the query.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Sure, you would have
FileMaker-
airtime.
Yeah, and if you were really doing a cart, you probably wouldn't, if someone clicked add to cart again and again, you would probably just update the total quantity or something. So there's a lot that could be done.
Credit card here to get that to go through on.
Oh, let me try yours.
That's the call thing for that one.
Any questions? I got a few more slides, but that's basically the demo part. If anyone has any questions or.
Because you're talking directly to this data,
Mhm.
is it going to be faster over WAN than the native client?
Depends. I'd say usually yes, because it's just a one-time load,
Right.
and then it's pretty quick. Yeah, so I'd say generally yes.
That's where we've been thinking about either using WebDirect this method as well.
Oh yeah, this will definitely be way faster than WebDirect.
Yeah, WebDirect as well.
Yeah.
But it's stateful.
It is stateful. Yeah, and you can do. That is actually something good to point out. Right now, I've got items in my cart. If I reload my page, those items go away. But there is something called Vuex, which keeps it basically is a state management thing. It's actually built by Vue, so it's it's just a module that you can use with it, and that will let you do page reloads and keep them all in the data still in your system. And I think of those more as like a global variables almost, because the data can be used throughout the entire system.
Have you done any testing? How many hits per second you can tolerate?
It's really system specific. If you're just getting small bits of data, it can be really fast. But if you have a table with 1,000 records on it and you're pulling it all at once and you got a lot of containers, it just really depends. I will say that I haven't personally tested it, but I've seen other people test it and it was faster than the PHP API. So I think it's a little bit faster than that, but
Medium complexity.
yeah.
Medium complexity website, 50 pages,
I
potential
mean,
10,000 records. Look up how many hits.
I think it would perform fine. I don't know what your traffic's like, but
Well, that's what I'm asking is what is the maximum traffic?
Concurrency on it, you mean? I think this is extremely scalable. I don't know if there's anything more scalable.
Well, concurrency is not a factor for the data. Right?
no, it's not. But the only problem is if you had 1,000 people trying to access it at once, then it becomes an issue. But no, there's no limit to how many people can hit it. And then another thing since we're going through a kind of an intermediary
There
file.
was an actual number of simultaneous.
It's 2,000.
Oh, is there?
Yeah,
Okay.
there is for the API.
I guess that's true. I was thinking like licensing limits, but it's more of a
You cannot run custom approach.
yeah.
Can't run Facebook files. I'm so sorry.
So I would think it's around 200 or YouTube without sweat.
Yeah. But you could always put between your API calls, and it's actually probably the way to do it is cache your calls, like with memcache or something like that. So basically, you're not always hitting the API. You're not always hitting FileMaker. You can cache it, memcache, or I can't think of the other name right now. But that's probably the preferred way to do it if you're really trying to scale it. That would be the way to go.
So, from a physical standpoint, how is it architected? Do you have FileMaker server on one machine?
Yeah, you could have the actual hosting can be anywhere. You can have it on the same machine or separate. It doesn't really matter. But as far as how the mem caching would work, Basically, in your PHP file or whatever file is directly communicating, you basically, whatever the URL is that you're using to get the data, you kind of use that as your key, and then the cache basically checks to see if that has been called in the last 10 seconds or 20 seconds, and if it has, it uses that, and then it doesn't hit your database. So yeah.
I assume that in the case of thousands and 10,000s of records, you have some kind of pagination that you could do when
Yeah.
Vue is hitting the network request.
Yeah, you definitely would want to paginate. And I can show you. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Postman.
Yeah.
It's super fast.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you're not feeling pulled back, updated, your
Oops.
first page stop.
But yeah, on our website and on the article I did on the official FileMaker Data API, there's a Postman collection. So right now I just authenticated with the server, got my token, and I can go in and, so that's not it. So right here, you can paginate it. So right now I only want to get 2 records at a time. And so yeah, found for, return to. So yeah, you can paginate it and limit it. And I think it's offset, something like that. Or I don't remember what it is. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, yeah, this is a really good tool. This is actually how I did the PHP pages. I went in here, did the query, and then there's this little code button right here. And you click that, and they have whatever language you're trying to integrate with. So I just went to PHP curl. It's like, oh, that's how you do it. Copy, paste, throw it in. I wouldn't say this is the prettiest looking code in the world, but
Say 30 minutes of writing.
yeah.
30. If you can Google really fast.
Yeah, any other questions? All right, I'll finish this last little part. Go full screen then. Yeah, so some potential gotchas and workarounds. So if you're using Vue with a Vue router, and router is just a way to make single page applications. You can go between different pages, stuff like that. If you're using that, just be aware that SEO optimization, you might have issues with that because while the Google bot, it does have JavaScript, the crawler can do JavaScript pages, but it's much slower. And but a lot of the other ones like Bing and stuff, if you have a purely JavaScript page, it relies on it. It will not index everything. You can do things like server-side rendering to ensure the web crawlers can access it correctly. I use Nuxt. Nuxt is basically Vue, but with a few niceties added on so that you can do server-side rendering, and it kind of just makes it a little easier to get up and running with that. If you might run into some issues with older browsers. A lot of that code I was writing is what's it called? ECMAScript 6, I think it's called. Anyway, that's not compatible with older browsers. So if you're using the command line interface tools, you can include something called Babel and polyfills, and that basically you would have a build step. Right now we were doing everything I typed was just going directly to Chrome into the browser, but a lot of times the way we do it is there would be a build step in between that minifies the code, does Babel and the polyfills, makes it compatible with the older browsers, and so that's a good way to go. And then the last thing you might run into is issues with CORS, which is a cross-origin resource sharing. This basically means JavaScript doesn't let you talk to other sites directly from different domains unless the other page is specifically set up to accept that. And that's why you typically have a backend as well. As long as for security, that's definitely part of it, but PHP doesn't have that same limitation. It can talk to, if you tried to talk to FileMaker Data API directly from JavaScript, it will not work because of the cross-origin resource sharing. I've looked into yeah, I've looked into like adding, whitelisting basically, and you could do it, but you have to like get into the settings of your server and places you're not supposed to touch basically. So I don't. And then, yeah, there's just some additional resources. We've got 2 articles that we just released about Vue. A lot of it is a recap of this, so it's a lot of good information. And obviously this will make the slides available. The YouTube video is available. It's being live streamed and will be available for, I don't know how we'll get that, maybe on Twitter or something. And then, yeah, the official data API. So these are all just some articles that we've got about that. And that is all I've got, unless you got any more questions. Yes. Oh.
Do you have any questions by chance online? Can you see?
Oh, yeah, let's look at the live stream.
Morning screen.
Yeah, nothing in chat.
Nothing? Oh, Armin, I expected more from you.
Was he following along?
I think so. He said he was.
So that's a heckling in the chat.
Yeah. All right, no questions?
Thank you, Mason.
All right, thank you.